Welcome to HY302. My name is Elaine Malani. My student ID is S111-33996. And in my presentation today, I'll be presenting on the historical experience of the Banabans in Fiji. Now, before we take a look at the experience of the Banabans in Fiji, let's first have a brief overview of the Banabans or of Kiribati. In 1960, the British took over Kiribati and along with Tuvalu, and then it named it Gilbert and the Ellis Island. Gilbert was Kiribati and Ellis Island was Tuvalu. Now they were both joined into a colony that was under Britain. And then in 20 years' time, the British found out that there were phosphate on the island of Kiribati, and that's when the extraction began. And the mining stopped when the Japanese took over in 1942 to 1945. Now this led to the dispersion of the Banabans in other Micronesian islands. And after the World War II, the Banabans who was in Nauru and Kosrae and other islands, Kosrae, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. Anyway, so they gathered in Tarawa, which is the capital of Kiribati, only to find out that their island was devastated and no longer habitable. Now, this wasn't because of climate change, this was due to the phosphate mining. And then since Kiribati was under the British colony, they had a talk, and then the British Phosphate Commission had to try and arrange for a piece of land in Fiji. And then using the phosphate, the money from the phosphate, they bought Rambi Island. And then the Gilberties, they agreed to just have a 2-year resettlement in Fiji. So it wasn't like they wasn't planning on having it as a permanent home. They were just planning to have it as just a temporary place where they could stay. And then on December 1945, the Banabans arrived in Rambi Island on a ship called Chayuna, if I'm correct. And this was arranged by the British Phosphate Commission. Now take a look at the location of Kiribati and Rambi on the Pacific map. Now Kiribati is right on the top, and Fiji, or the island that they bought in Fiji, Rambi Island, is at the bottom left corner. You can see there. So imagine being a migrant coming from Kiribati all the way to Fiji. Let's take a look at what they experienced. Oh, sorry, before we take a look at that, let's look at Fiji. So now Rambi on the Fiji map is located on the top right-hand corner. You can see there in the northern island of Vanuatu. That's where Rambi is located. Anyways, let's take a look at the experience. So if you take a look at the picture on the left, you can see that there are tents. So when the British Phosphate Commission, they brought the Banabans over, they didn't provide a good housing for them. See, they just only provided army tents, and according to Kempf and Herman, 2005, the Banabans were put in army tents, and they wasn't even provided enough supplies of food and medicine. So you can imagine what life was like back then for them. And on the picture of the right hand, you can see that although they were caught in hopelessness, and they experienced loss of their homeland and acquiring a new land in a new country, you can still see that despite this experience, the Banabans, they still looked happy. They still tried their best to adapt to a new environment. Okay, so like I said, they were living in tents with less food supply and medical supply. So when they started complaining, because now they want to move back to Kiribati, then the British Commission, they the British Phosphate Commission, they had interest in the Kiribati, the Banabans settling in Rambi Island, and because of this, they managed to get their interest back to the Banabans so that they can permanently settle down in Rambi Island. Okay, so the Banabans, they adapted to the environment, and because of that, they progressed from a camping ground to building their first 3 settlements at the copper production center. And then after that, the Banabans then demonstrated their determination to take possession of their new island by naming the highest mountain on Rambi Island, Delai Rambi, or Delai Rambi. So, I'll just stop there. Anyways, they also seized the chance to anchor in the colonial Fiji landscape, and they never abandoned to Banaban. So although they settled down in Fiji, most of their cultures, most of their norms or their dress codes, they still practice that. Now in May 1947, they had a special restructuring and consolidation which took place up at the first half of the 1950s. They started a program to reconstruct permanent buildings, linking this undertaking to the goal of refounding on Rambi Isle as their original village. So now most of the villages, they divided into four main villages, just like they did in Banaba. So now if you go to Rambi Island, you'll have Tabuewa, Bokonaika, Una, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, sorry, and Tabiang. So at the moment, Tabiang is like the capital. If you go to Rambi, Tabiang is like the capital. So yeah, they settled down, and despite all the new changes that they had to go through, they learned to adapt, and whatever was their culture and their practices from from Kiribati, they brought it into Rambi, and then they make sure that they make Rambi their permanent home without forgetting their culture. So the next slide is just a bibliography. This is the pictures where I got my pictures from, and this is where I got most of my information from, and I hope that helps. But otherwise, you could also click on the link below or send me a message on my email address, which I'll be putting in the description below. You could always email me and ask any more questions that you have. Thank you very much.